Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, David Parker. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, a Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today. We're going to chat about mostly your income and wealth book, because we were going to hit on the topic of minimum wage to wealth in 10 years. Is it even possible in today's economy? But you've also just have another book come out that is a wonderful book that people can go check out. A San Francisco conservative, David Parker's Essays, Volume 2. They can check out that on your website and find out more about that. I believe you're at davidparkeressays.com, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, before we get going here, you've been in education for years and you're also a musician. What even prompted you to write your books?
Well, I've been an educator and I've been dealing with always low-income inner city schools. And if someone were to ask me, what do you take away from 40 years of teaching? And I would say, don't underestimate people. I was just shocked how people throughout the world and poor or rich are the same.
Yeah,
absolutely. I had children the same age, the children I'm teaching, and I'm going, everything these children say is what my kids say, and they all want Barbie dolls, just like whatever it was. Kids are the same everywhere, and then I became very wealthy as an entrepreneur, as an investor while I was teaching. And I began to feel my position was amoral, that I didn't care what the economy was doing. I learned as a business person how you go around every piece of government regulation, every piece of government taxation. The rich are not paying taxes. And that began to bother me. Maybe that amoral position is a little bit immoral. I wouldn't mind paying some taxes. My accountant doesn't let me, but otherwise I began to write and I began to I wanted to tell progressives, I suppose, that all taxes are paid by the middle class.
Yeah.
And you should know that when you're advocating spending more and more and more, you're paying for it. Your standard of living is much lower than it would be if there was no taxation or very low taxation. You're paying for it, and you cannot show me any government program that has really done a lot of good. And I always quote the war on poverty, 1964. Even during the Vietnam War, President Johnson says it was unconscionable that a nation as wealthy as America would have a poverty rate of 15%. I hereby declare an unconditional war on poverty. Well, that needle of 15% hasn't moved on average since 1964. Poverty is still 15%, and we have just the war on poverty. We have a national debt of $23 trillion, 4 times all the wars America's ever fought, and nothing to show for it. And progressives, or not progressive, middle class people are paying for it and getting nothing, and we should stop.
Now, tell me, David, you know what I heard about a number of years ago from one of our old guests is they were pushing for a universal kind of sales tax where we get rid of all of the state tax, the federal tax, and we just charge on things like groceries or wealth. Right. But, that way, anyone, if you are rich and you buy your bigger tagged items, everyone would be charged 10% down the line. And actually the rich would then end up paying more taxes. If we didn't have like a loophole, get out of paying it because you bought this boat and, you could write it off for a business expense. It's like, nope, you're paying 10% on that boat tax, whatever. And then the poor, they have less, they'll buy less. And everyone would actually be paying a fairer tax. I thought, oh my God, like that's the coolest thing ever. But it doesn't seem to go forward as far as that idea into government. I'm guessing maybe certain people in government think, we wouldn't get enough taxes, so we're not going to do that. I mean, what's your take?
Well, that's one of the reasons, because government spends so much money. It spends much more than it takes in. Medicare, Social Security, it's not paid for by taxes. It's paid for by borrowing. We're on a very bad path.
Wow.
But what you talked about was kind of a consumption tax. In Europe, they do that. If you go to any store or restaurant in France, for example, it says value added tax, VAT, something like that. 25, 26%.
Yeah.
And the French have a normal income tax, maybe it's about 25%, but they're really paying 50%. And they really are paying. European socialism is just like American. They're paid for by the working middle class. Yeah. It's still not paid for the rich. It's a regressive tax, a consumption tax. The rich can afford to go pay 10% on their boat.
That's
but
true.
A poor person, 10% on their groceries, it's very regressive. It's not quite right.
Well, actually, we'd probably end up paying more, because I looked at what I pay for federal, or when I was in New York, it's quite high in New York State, and then the federal and everything. So much comes out of my paycheck with taxes, and I thought, wow, if you just did 10% what I chose to get in, groceries or whatever, I'd still end up paying less. And I was like, this is nuts, because, I think when it comes out of your paycheck, you just never look at it. And I think that was the reason they had it done like that. So you don't see it, you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. In France, they can't take 50% out of your salary. People would object. They take 25% and then charge you every item you buy 25%.
Yeah. So that's the killer. That's the killer there.
I'm talking honesty. I'm a conservative only for economic stuff. I'm not conservative for social or political matters. We should tell the public the truth, and we shouldn't borrow to pay for basic services.
Yeah. How do we get past this? Because we are, oh my gosh, our debt that we as a country owe will be, I don't know how many generations we'll be able to pay that off. I mean, it just goes up and up and up. Do you see a way we could backtrack that and get off the debt and the borrowing and all of that as a country? Yeah,
there's one way, I think, and that's the whole population there has to be a consensus that maybe we should. Some political candidate runs on office saying, I'm going to lower the debt and I'm going to stop. We're not going to pay for things by borrowing anymore. And everyone says, okay, we all agree. That has to happen. And it's not impossible, but that consensus hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But I was in Greece in 2010. It was called the Euro crisis. And Greece says, we're not paying our debts anymore. We don't have any money. We're borrowing for everything. Mm-hmm. And finally, they agree, okay, I guess we have to. And they cut Social Security payments in half. Boom. I was sitting there with a group of teachers, and they showed me their check. Last month, it was this, and this month, it's half. And nobody was objecting. They were laughing. It's because the Greek politicians, like our politicians, run to office saying, vote for me, and I will get money spent in your district, or I'll get you more benefits from government than you can believe. Vote for me. Mm-hmm. And the Greeks were saying we were getting way too much stuff. This was obscene. So when they cut it in half, everybody laughed. Yeah, we didn't deserve it. And in that sense, Americans are living way over their means in part. And so if we cut Medicare a little bit and cut Social Security a little bit, that's most of the debt. That would solve the problem. But everybody has to agree. Yes, we're willing to make those cuts.
Yes.
And maybe consumption tax a little bit higher, or a minimum tax, no matter what you're earning, no matter what your write-offs are. Nobody gets by with zero. As it is now, the rich are not paying taxes, period.
Yeah.
Bezos, maybe one of the world's richest, hasn't paid tax in 20 years. And Apple Computer, which has a beautiful space station in Cupertino, California, near where I am, that's not their real headquarters. They're headquartered in Ireland, and all their money is in a tax haven on Jersey Island in the English Channel. And all the big companies have gotten their money out of this country a long time ago.
Well, you know what I've heard people say as far as what the businesses, why they can get away with it is, well, they give them a tax break because they offer all these jobs, but to pay nothing. And what it is, a lot of times, one guy, he was a tax attorney. He said, listen, if you were flying a lot and you can afford to get your pilot license and actually take the time to learn, you can buy a plane in cash and then have it all written off as long as you fly at least 50% for business. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's how you get a free airplane? I mean, not exactly free. You do have to pay it on the front end. But the point is, no one who's not rich to begin with wouldn't be able to even do that.
All right. But now we'll get into a little bit of my book for 1 second.
Cool.
That's only part. The real reason the rich are not paying tax is because they have income producing assets. One, they write those depreciation off on those assets. And whenever the income gets higher, is over time, the income rises, they borrow against those assets. So they always show zero income. That's how the rich get out of paying taxes. It's not the airplanes. It's always showing zero income.
Wow.
So that the rich, someone asked me once, who are the rich? And I almost didn't even have a good answer. Is it the top 1%, the top 5%? It's neither. It's anybody who's financially independent. If you don't have to go to work because you have income, that's rich. If you're not working because you have enough money. And that is one of my themes in my Income and Wealth. I show how a minimum wage employee at McDonald's, almost an Excel spreadsheet, can become financially independent in 10 years, and they don't have to work again. If you earn more than minimum wage, you will have that wage. You'll have a higher wage for life. And the way that's done is every year you save half your salary, half your gross salary, and then purchase with leverage an income producing asset. You buy the house next door. The house next door is too expensive. Get your spouse or a friend and buy half the house, whatever you have. But just buy an asset you can afford every year for 10 years. And you have depreciation, you have income, and the loans pay off eventually. Maybe in 20 years, you have no loans. But after 10 years, it works out that you have cash flow from those 10 investments. You're free.
Wow.
And maybe it's hard to do it, but just when you're young, it's easier. Yeah. For example, don't commute 2 hours a day or an hour each way. Live around the corner from where you work and put those 2 extra hours at time and a half. In San Francisco, it's $15 minimum wage because it's more expensive here. In Texas, it might be $10 because it's less expensive, but it's the same thing. So if you're working at $15 an hour, 2 extra hours at $22.50 all year long, that starts to add up. There's no end to how you can cut costs. Get a roommate, live 2 families in a house for a while. Yeah. When you're younger, you can do that.
Yeah.
So for 10 years and you're free.
Wow.
Then you can do what you want in life. You can be a podcaster. You can be an artist. You can be a school teacher. You don't care what you open a restaurant, even if it doesn't make any money, you don't care. They're having a good time.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's true. Everyone's economic goal, financial independence. And that's one of my themes in my Income and Wealth, davidparkeressays.com or Amazon.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're saying this, David, because it seems for a lot of people hearing these stories about people who are financially free, oh, that's them. That could never be me. I'd never be able to reach it. But this makes it seem, now I do hear from you that there's going to be some uncomfortability, whatever it is. If you take on that roommate, you're living a couple people in one house just to make, just do that saving, to do that storage of money or to store the money to add to, investments so you can build your wealth. Yeah. But that small time of uncomfortability will lead to a lifetime of you being able to do what you want and to be free and not have to be tied to a job. How many people say, I hate this. I can't wait for the weekend. I had seen a video recently saying most people who have a job are wishing 5 days of the week away every single week for just the weekend. And it broke down how many days you're living for, just 2 days out of the week. And what's that equal hour wise that you're losing of your entire life? Yeah, nuts.
Doing a job you don't like, that's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is phenomenal. So you had mentioned everyone go get your book at davidparkeressays.com. And I also see David Parker Sextet if they want to .com if they want to find out more about where you're playing at any given time. Yeah.
You can go there to find out where I'm playing. And there's if you go even to David Parker Essays, there's one little video of my band playing.
Oh, nice.
I have some street musicians. Look, I have one of the best bands in San Francisco. We headlined the Fillmore Jazz Festival 2 years in a row.
Oh, nice.
I'm a very serious musician.
Awesome. Now, just briefly, I'd like for you to touch on what brought you to write a San Francisco Conservative. What brought that about?
Well, I kind of mentioned it. I thought it was immoral after a while that the rich are not paying tax. I'm aware of it, and I'm not paying attention to politics. I don't care who's in office, because the rich know how to go around every piece of government legislation. It's like a labyrinth. You can, my little kid can do a labyrinth in 5 seconds. That's what Wall Street does. Government says this, here's how you go around it. That's you can't tax the rich.
Yeah.
And that bothered me. I wanted to tell America, you're paying for everything. And if you better get together as a, we had a chance. It's very unfortunate that we had with Donald Trump, a man completely unqualified for the job. But had he been qualified, that was a tiny break. The whole nation, in 2016, they had polls. Some polls showed 90% Hillary. All polls showed Hillary had this election. Donald Trump was in Moscow doing deals. He figured he lost. He couldn't believe that he won. So everybody lied, because for the first time, there was a consensus. Maybe the two political parties really have no intention of solving the problems that everybody is concerned with. Let's put in somebody and see what happens. Well, we found out what happens. But in 2016, we didn't know he was going to be so bad. So the nation is ready for that. The nation has to find a really good candidate, who a moderate person who says, I'm going to not spend more than what we tax. And we're going to try to lower taxes if we can.
Yeah.
And cut government programs that are doing nothing. The war on poverty has nothing to show except debt. So the nation has to be ready for that seriousness, and cut Medicare and Social Security a little bit too. It's way over the top.
Yeah. It's interesting, David. You often hear about the war on this and war on that, war on drugs. Not gone.
Yeah, same thing. War on drugs. What a failure. Yeah, same. Exactly.
Still drugs. But, I think, honestly, it kind of leads more to that thing they're calling war on. But, I've said for quite some time, if everyone would stop focusing on this magic leader to come make it all better. I mean, the president really, in all essence, should have very minimal responsibility other than, being the front leader for the country and leading the military where need be. But we have a Senate and a Congress and local and state officials, of which people don't really educate on what are these people doing, how are they changing the laws in my area. And so we have a lot more power than we think we do, but people go out and they vote and they don't know who they're voting for. So I think don't look at party lines. Enough with the parties. Just pick people you think meet your values. Oh, well, they won't get hired. I'm not going to, pick the Green Party. They'll never get hired. Well, we don't know if we don't pick them, eh? So.
Well, you're on an important subject right there. The reason we have politicians that are so divided is that the voting districts are obscenely gerrymandered. No Democrat is running against a Republican, and no Republican is running against a Democrat in the final election. So they don't have to come together and find a middle ground. No Democrat has to convince a Republican to vote for him. So you have 6 Democrats running against each other. Who's the most left? That person gets it. And Republicans, who's the most right? That person gets it. So you have a Congress that's extreme on both sides, when in fact the nation is not extreme. The nation is actually moderate. Most people are just like you and I. Everything I'm saying, people would say, that sounds true. This nation is moderate, and you wouldn't know it by listening to the political parties.
Or the news.
So we need to get moderates in office, and then we need to work within live within our budget, live within our means, and that'll solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, it's been fabulous having you here and sharing today. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Broadcasting today.
Okay. Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more Savvy episodes and Savvy Biz Tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.